Okay, good evening. We're glad to have each of you here tonight. We're going to jump into the book of Ecclesiastes. I haven't, I love this book, and I think I mentioned to you a while back, I did a study years ago. Chuck Swindoll wrote a book called Living on the Ragged Edge back from the early 80s. And it's a really good practical study, which Ecclesiastes is. If you know the book and you understand the journey that Solomon took, the preacher, as he's called, and you see all the ups and downs, and you're going, yep, I did that. Yep, I tried that. Yep, I thought I'd find worth in that. And yep, I took that pursuit and it didn't pan out. And you go, yep, that's what Solomon did. And he tried to give us the cheat code and we didn't listen. And so we tried to do it ourselves. And then we read it and go, yep, I don't know what I was thinking. So I'm just going to encourage you with this thought tonight. The message tonight is called, It's Time to Let It Go. And I don't want anybody singing, Let It Go. It's not your cue. Some of y'all were getting your pipes warmed up and ready. So, Michael Constantine, what'd you do to my headset, dude? This thing's all jacked up, man. Is that shouldn't have been a problem for me either, sir. But anyway, yeah. So let me just ask you a couple questions, okay? Do you find yourself... let's picture the roller coaster, okay? And this is not your atypical back in the, certain day where it's just a couple. This is this roller coaster on steroids, okay? There's several loop-de-loops, whatever you want to call them, upside downs and all arounds, massive drops. We're going to free fall a little bit while we're doing this. And you're looking at it, and you're having some natural intrepidation. By the way, I wouldn't even be intrepidating on this. I don't know if that's a word. I would just be not going in line. This is not me. I do a little bit with motion sickness, and I usually lose in that one. So roller coasters and me don't get along. But I've got 2 kids and a wife that absolutely get so excited. The more of all this, the more they want to do them. And I just say, I'll hold the stuff. Y'all have fun. So I just wonder, do you find yourself struggling? You're getting ready to get on the line and you're talking in line. You're talking yourself into this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get on the ride, but I really am having to psych myself up. Can anybody relate to what I'm talking about when you're facing, and I'm using a roller coaster more as a metaphorical thing than a literal thing, okay? You know what it does. You see all the things because it's literally right in front of you as you hear everybody, mind you, nobody just goes like this and everybody's quiet. And all of a sudden there's this, because everybody's falling and dropping and doing all this stuff. And so you talk yourself into it, then you talk yourself out of it, and you have this conversation with yourself 1,500 times. And you'll eventually, you either walk away or you suck it up and you go for it. It's not literal. But it is very literal in a lot of people's lives because life is topsy-turvy, certainly upside down, okay? Stressful, unpredictable. 1 minute you think you've got it figured out. The next minute, here comes the drop that you didn't see. And everything goes sideways at times. And so what many people choose to do when they see the ride, when they know what's coming, is we back away. And we back away. And we don't embrace what God has put in front of us. Now, I don't want to get on the ride any more than you probably may want to, or maybe you do and you're just a thrill seeker and you don't care, bring it on. But I can tell you this, when it comes to Christian living, don't you think for a moment it's a level field, okay? Christian living is not Kansas, okay? Anybody understand? Anybody been to Kansas before? How many hills do you find in Kansas? 0, okay? Okay, there's this. I think Jesus told us all this in advance, and he let us know this. So understanding that Jesus told us it would be a little bit, it's going to push you to the edge. Jesus also reminds us in this edginess of life, there is John 10:10. Yes, you can have life, and you can have it in a way that is excessive in a godly fashion. It's abounding is the idea there. So for all of us who struggle, me included, here's wisdom. Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Would you stand with me for the reading of God's word? A lot of pictures are given in Ecclesiastes chapter 11 that I want you to see. The first of which is in verse 1, cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. Give a portion to 7 and also to 8, and for thou knowest not what evil shall be upon the earth. If the clouds be full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth, and if the tree fall toward the south or toward the north or in the place where the tree falleth, there it shall be. He that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. Let's just go ahead and hit pause there. You can go ahead and be seated. We'll finish up through verse 8 momentarily. So if we're going to just embrace the ride and we're going to say, you know, it's time to let it go, I'm not going to hold back. I'm not going to be skittish about this. A couple things we need to do. First of all, you've got to see the opportunity. Most of us see fear. We see, I don't think I can. And too often we negotiate ourselves out of what God has put in front of us to do. And I have to tell myself this many times, but you don't have to be a preacher. This is you, this is me, this is everybody. That's why Ecclesiastes 11 is here, and that's why God said, Pete, preach this tonight for us and for those, thank you, that are able to tune in as well and watch with us. How many opportunities do you think in a week we miss? Don't answer out loud, but I'm guesstimating that most of us are thinking it's not zero. We probably missed an opportunity here. We probably didn't seize a moment there. And so we miss these things. In these verses, we see occasions that God's saying, let it go. Or can I just translate it this way? Do something. You're going to see 3 active words in a moment, but I don't want to jump there yet. But when you do this, the anxiety is already starting to jump. And this is why God gives us this beautiful writing, very picturesque. I mean, we went from bread and basically diversifying our assets in a way, so it's almost dealing with a financial brokerage kind of deal. Then we see the clouds, and we see trees and storms. And I mean, there's a lot of pictures that we're seeing as we're walking through this, I don't know, but this imagery that God's trying to give us because he knows that a picture says 1,000 words. So we have anxiety, okay? It's kicking in, right? Because here's where we are. I've got routines, you have routines. And God forbid he ever trying to rock the boat, right? Let's shake things up a little bit, Pete. And listen, I've told this to somebody earlier today, and I'm going to tell you and everybody that's what. The older we get, guess what? The more stubborn we become. And I'm living proof of that, by the way. I don't like to change as much as I used to. 20s, 30s, bring it on. Now, hey, I know what time my show's on. I know we got streaming and all this stuff. When I get up, there's coffee, absolute. It's a must. There's obviously Jesus, of course. And I don't want to be bothered. I don't want this. I need my quiet time. And I have a routine. And God forbid anything interrupt that. My wife is so careful when she's getting ready in the morning. There's a door in the Flanagan's home that separates the room that we're staying in. Some of you that helped us move in, you may remember, it's a door to the kitchen. So I sit in what was once the dining area, study at a table there, and I say once, it's not that I destroyed it, it's the table's not there anymore. They've given it to another family member. And so anyway, with that being said, she comes into the kitchen and she's real quiet and she gets her ice, but she does it as quietly as she can for her drinks and all these things before she goes to work. And we're doing all this 5:30 in the morning, and I'm just kind of drinking my coffee and we have a good routine. And God forbid if she ever came in and I didn't see her or she didn't do or I didn't do, she thinks something happened because we like our setup and we know how we do things. And God, we don't want to rock the boat. Let's play it safe. Right? Let's just not mess anything up. If it's not broke, don't fix it, right? And it's interesting because the pictures here say the otherwise. He didn't say keep your bread, he said cast it. Understand what casting is, right? Bro Johnny, this isn't the kind of casting where you bring it back in. This is the idea of letting it go. You're getting rid of it. Like you ever skip rocks on the water, that kind of thing, or whatever. Now, when I saw this, I went back to a day years ago in Orlando, Florida, where we would try to get the brim excited in the water. And so, we'd have a loaf of bread or a couple pieces of bread, and we'd toss it out there. And all of a sudden, you see, boom, boom, they start popping on the water. And the bread you see it kind of going down, boom, and they start biting it, and everything's going, and it's cool watching all this stuff. Anyway, This is not what's going on here. This is a picture, and some of you, if you've got a different translation, this is actually talking about seafaring vessels, okay? This isn't you and I on a pond. This is on the ocean, and Solomon would have vessels, and they would depart out into the waters, so to speak, and they would go, and they would go back and forth and ferry these. Now, it wouldn't be immediate trips, but nonetheless, that's the picture. If you cast it out there, and by the way, many opportunity has been missed because people haven't been willing to let it go. You've got to take that step. You've got to take that, and this is all about faith. This is all about our faith, and we are to be vessels of living faith in our Christian walk, and God will test us to see if we are truly going to grow in our faith, or we're just, God, I got me a little faith last year. I'm still good with what I got here. You go ahead and go on over there. You know, Caleb might want some, or Tad over here may want some, but I'm good with what I've got over here. And he said, Pete, no, you've got to do your part too. This is not meant for pastors. This is not meant for Old Testament saints. This is not meant for only those east of the Mississippi or west. There's none of that here. This is a directive to every one of us, and I'm trying to not get ahead of myself, but I'm doing that, so I'm going to be quiet on this part. We just need to see our opportunity, and it's staring us in the face. Here's the problem that I've heard a lot of times in church, and you've probably heard it too. You don't have to be a pastor. Pastor, I'd like to do this, but it's not the ideal time for me. It's Wednesday night, right? Miss Dina, it's okay if I treat y'all like it's Wednesday night and it's not Sunday morning where everybody might get their feel. That's one of the biggest lies of the devil that you will ever give for an excuse. Can you imagine standing before God? God, I was going to do that, but it just wasn't the right. Do you think God makes mistakes when he presents things in front of us and we have the audacity? My wife and I used to have a little deal. She would hint at me about, when are you going to propose? And we didn't have a long courtship. I mean, I met her in 1990, and we started dating, and we got married in 92. But she would start hinting at me. And if she's at home, and I know she's watching right now. She's not feeling well tonight. I know she's watching, and she knows the word I'm going to say, because this was our joke, if you will. And my response, because I felt pressured, and I was like, I know I want to do this, but how's this work? I've not really done this. I mean, I've never been engaged before, let alone married. You're 20, 21 years old. How does this work? And I would say the word soon. Because she wants to know, are we doing this, or are we just kind of, we're going to do this soon. Soon. That would pacify for a while, and then we'd have that conversation again. Well, she's saying, I think the ideal time is now. And I'm saying, but honey, you're not God, and I'm trusting him, and it's not the right time yet. And so eventually God worked it all out, and she's been with me all these years, praise God. It's just not a good time for me, Pastor. Okay. Please, before you ever say those ridiculous words again, check it before you wreck yourself. I think we did that one. Because God's saying, yeah, it is. I've put it here before you. There's an opportunity. And we're going to negotiate with God about whether it's opportune. You don't need to see all this. You don't have to put the fleece out in front of you, okay? If it's God, then it's God. And we just got to quit being cowardly, and we got to be Christian. I've heard people say, there's a lot of coward Christians. I don't think that's a correct statement, because if you're a Christian, you're certainly not coward. That doesn't line up. Jesus was never cowardly, was he? So it doesn't make sense to say, well, they're Christ-like, but they do it cowardly. Don't insult Christ by saying such a thing. There's no such thing. You're either coward or you're going to be Christian. You're going to have to make up your mind which way you're going to go. So do you live with the mindset? And maybe this speaks to all of us, because we negotiate with God, we tell him what we're going to do, and we miss the opportunities. So maybe this is us. Ready? Do you ever tell yourself, I just want to get through the day? Boy, there's a real optimistic outlook, right? I just got to get through this day. I got to get through this event. I got to get through this time in my life, and I'll be better afterward. Guess what? There's another storm on the horizon, in case you didn't see it. It's always, it clears up for a little bit, and here comes, it's just like our country. Here comes the next front coming through, and you're going to feel some of that, and it's going to be, because God's good. But I just got to get through this week. I've said that. I got to get through another day. Or maybe you say, instead of get through, I'm just trying to get by. I'm just trying to get by. Would you just leave me alone? I just want to get by. Maybe we've said that. Or maybe we've had I just want to get it over with. That's really abrupt, isn't it? I just want to get this over with so I can get back to normal. Tell me what normal looks like, y'all, and we'll figure that out. It really doesn't work that well. I'm looking for something here, and I thought I'd have it queued up, and I forgot about it. So I'm going to read this scripture, but I want to read it in the NLT because it says it. So look at verse 4. He that observeth the wind shall not sow, but he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. And it sounds good, but I like the way the NLT says, farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. Boy, that's just right in your face, isn't it? You're not going to get nothing, fellas, ladies, if you don't put it in the ground first, okay? Farmers who wait for perfect weather, it's just not the right time. Well, you're not going to get the crop. If they watch every cloud, they never harvest. I'm not a gardener. That's not my forte. So you that definitely know a lot more about that, you can speak to this. You're not going to get a crop if you don't get out and get after it. And that's what's going on here. The opportunities. Be careful that you do not become so paralyzed in your pessimism. There's nothing like going to a church full of paralyzed pessimists, right? We're not that kind. That's the other people, right? We're more spiritual than that. And we're just, what do we call them? Debbie Downers. We're just, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. It's never going to make it, and this and that. We missed out when opportunity knocks. All right, let me jump off that ship. Verse 5. As thou knowest not what is the way of the Spirit, nor how the bones do grow in the womb. So we're seeing some really cool pictures here. Of her that is with child, even so thou knowest not the works of God who maketh all. Pretty good here. So we saw opportunity. Now I want you to behold the mystery. Because there's some things you and I are going to try to keep our finger on and say, God, I need to see it intangible. And look, we deal with a God that says, I want you to live by faith. So you're asking God to do something that he doesn't operate by. I want everything in black and white. I want everything right, crystal clear in front of me. And God doesn't do that. And if you've done Christian living for any kind of length of time, you know this, I know this, and we live in this imaginary world where we think, well, now I can figure out God now, and he says, my ways are not your ways. So we need to remember that God does what he wants, and it's always for his best. And this is a mystery, and some of the things are mysterious about it, and he gives us some pictures here. So, as thou knowest not what is the way, okay, basically, there's two pictures here. The word spirit here is really translated the word for wind, okay? So you don't know, we could say, well, the weatherman says, and unless you really do with meteorology, most of us are not going to be able to track it necessarily ourselves. So we don't know. And by the way, God can do whatever he wants. The weather forecast is never 100% accurate, okay? Some of you that get real excited about these forecasts and weather, 2 weeks ago, they were saying right around now, we're supposed to have another one of those Arctic things. Look, Friday, I think it's low 70s. So much for that, right? I mean, where's that at? This is what happens when people try to make all these predictions well in advance. God knows what's going on. He says, "Know not what is the way of the wind," the Spirit. And then he goes into the birthing, and he says, or how the bones do grow in the womb. And I know they didn't have the picture imagery that we do now, and we have a lot of technology. But just because you could see it happening doesn't mean you can really fully understand it. Well, no, there's the bone structure, and I can get all my medical people here, and they can tell me, well, this happens and this happens. But here's the thing, that happens because God allows it to. God makes it to. And we're not the ones that can go into the labs and just concoct. And I know we've got all these technology and advancements now. But we all want some degree of certainty. Is it going to rain? Well, I don't know, but I always carry an umbrella just in case. Never know. Well, not literally, I put it in the car, but you get the idea. Well, my investment that I'm about to make, it's a little risky. Is it going to be profitable? Am I going to come out ahead, or am I wasting my effort in this? Am I making the right step in my life? Am I making this right move or this decision in my life? We don't always know what God's up to. And let me just get this out now, okay? It's okay. Trust God. That's another word for faith. Yes, trust. And yet there's something within all of us that, God, I'm, kind of like, here we are. It's, God, I know I need to surrender this. I'm convicted, I'm burdened, and I lay it all on this beautiful altar, only to do what? About 5 minutes later, 4 minutes later, maybe nobody will see. I'll just kind of tuck it back and keep it on me. That's not faith. That's fear. That's, God, I can't let it go because I don't trust you. And we have to trust him. By the way, I want to remind you, somebody find Esther 4:16. We did Esther pretty extensively. You remember sovereign God? Esther 4. I'm going to ask somebody to read that when you get there, if you don't mind, please. Esther 4 and verse 16. I love that book. We did that pretty extensively. So somebody got it? I'll let you read it. Anybody? Okay. Oh, Miss Martha, thank you. Verse 16, please.
Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish.
So I got to do something real quick. Here you go, Miss Martha. I always rewarded my people when I was doing student ministry for sword drills. So she won. So good job. Thank you. So you might remember the story. It's dire. Remember Mordecai and Esther. The Jews are in peril. Good old Haman. I'm going to make this rule. We get rid of all the Jews. And Esther's trying to negotiate. I can't do that. I haven't been summoned. It's been 30 days, I think it was. I can't do this. And if the guy's standing there right next to the throne that can remind you, if you make a false move and he doesn't hold out the scepter, whoosh, you're done. She thinks she may be on the bottom of the totem pole now instead of the top like she once was. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. And I love her spirit. A young lady, mind you, she's not seasoned in life. She's just still figuring it out. She's in what we would consider a youthful days, probably not a teenager, but not a mature older person. And she said, if I die, I die. Now, that's the epitome of faith. You and I haven't probably faced such a situation. Maybe you have, and I don't mean to underestimate, but certainly that's something I've never seen in my life. I mean, her demeanor and her spirit. Yeah, there's a mystery. I'm not sure what's going to be the outcome, but I trust God enough to leave it in his hands. Well, God's sovereign. I know he can handle it. So if he wants me to die, and look, let's be honest. We can buckle up. We can bubble wrap ourselves tight. And if it's our time, it's our time. We live in this world where I'm in control. Do you realize we are never fully in control, but I know the one who is? So what are we talking about here? The mystery is real. Yes, but so is God. I wonder if Esther had the look on her face. You know what I mean when I say the look? You could test yourself. Don't look immediately and just ask yourself before you stand in front of a mirror, do I enjoy life? And then you stand in front of the mirror and see what it looks back at you like. Is it that smiling, effervescent? Because you got your Wednesday night face on, right? I'm good, I'm fine, no worries. But nobody else is in the house. And you go up there and here's this look, like you've been run over 5 times in a row, okay? And you're just, or maybe you're beat up with the world and it's not even a sad face, it's a mad face. But you work on it for a couple minutes before you go to worship and you kind of put that persona on before you go to work and you got that image now and you're okay. Your heart says, I'm going to let go, but your face says otherwise. You're pessimistic. The optimism is long gone, and all you feel is cynicism and pessimism, and it's just eating you up. Let's just cut to the chase. We don't understand God. We get a cheat code with the Bible to give some understanding. But the Bible even tells us you're not going to figure me out entirely. And that's okay. Because God wants us to continue to walk with him and trust him and understand him to the best of our ability, because he's going to work things out in his perfect way as long as we walk with him. So instead of worry, just keep walking. Let it go. Let it go. All right. Third thing, I want to back up to verses 1 and 2. And I want us to see, we're going to look at 3 verbs. Let me read down to verse 6. We read verse 5. In the morning, sow thy seed. And in the evening, it gets dark, and they don't have some of the advantages we have today. Withhold not thine hand, for thou knowest not whether shall prosper either this or that, or whether they shall both shall be alike good. And that goes back to some of that mystery we just talked about at the end of verse 6. But I want you to see yours and mine call to productivity. Okay? Opportunity, mystery, but yet still productivity. I had a different word here, and I didn't like the word because I just felt like it didn't convey the entire meaning, because the word I was looking at was activity. But just because you're active doesn't mean you're accomplishing much. I mean, I've seen some kids. I used to do bus ministry. I think I've told you that. And I'd see kids run all day, and they're just running circles, and they're hyper, and the moms and dads say, here, take my kid, let me have a 2-hour break. Here's all the sugar candy we loaded them up with. They're yours, have fun. And they're just, they're doing a lot of activity and busyness, but there's nothing being accomplished except for stressing me out. So that doesn't always mean anything. We often assume that activity means productivity, and I'm going to tell you, that's fool's gold. That's not real. God calls us to something more than just being active, okay? He calls us to be productive. You say, well, what do you mean by that? I'm going to remind you, busyness is not what God called us to. He called us to bear fruit. Activity, busyness. Bearing fruit, productivity. That's the end game of the harvesting and the planting and the tending and to the trees and such, or the crops. Let me go back to verses 1 and 2. So we saw the word sow in verse 6, but we also see the word cast in verse 1, and we see give in verse 2. All verbs, meaning you have to participate. You have to get involved. You have to engage. You have to do something. And we can't be standing there looking at the roller coaster and going, I don't think I can do. Well, you're not going to get anything out of it. You have to get in. You have to buckle up, but you have to do these things. There are 3 specific calls to productivity here: cast, give, sow. And you know, going back to verse 1, and I alluded to this earlier, and I was referring to 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 22. I'm not going to read that tonight, but you see in that, these are Solomon's vessels that he would send out on the waters, and I think it was about a 3-year span, they would eventually return. Well, we don't know if they're going to return. They might run into a storm. But you have to put your bread on the water. You have to take that chance. You have to do. Life is about, and Christian faith is not any different. You will find that crossroads where there will be some risk-taking. But is it really risk-taking if God is leading us? Is there really a risk when it comes to having faith? Yes and no. Because on our end, I'm not sure about this. This is fearful, and you're dealing with all that emotional whatever that comes through your mind that you're trying to figure out. I don't know if this is what I'm supposed to. How do I know? I mean, is this going to work? Is not. But I'm studying, I'm praying, and I believe this is the path, this is the decision, this is God's leading. And so here we go. So yeah, in the sense of a worldly perspective, the world would call it a risk, but the Bible calls it faith, because they don't understand what faith looks like. They want certainty. God wants productivity. How are you going to accomplish productivity? Because there's a mystery. So how do I know? You don't. That's called faith, and we live by faith. That's what the Bible tells us to do. And so he says, put your bread out on the water. You're not just throwing it to a bunch of brim. You're doing it for a productive return. Because when these vessels would do, this is where they would swap. They would send goods, they would get back riches, they would get back other products, and there'd be an exchange for the betterment of both. So the idea in these passages, you cast. And then the word give in verse 2 is about, your diversification. You put all your eggs in one basket, it may not turn out well. So you diversify. And that's some economic principles that some of you that are smarter than me could probably teach on. But what I will tell you is this. You give to many so that should trouble arise, guess what? I've been benevolent. Now I'm in need. Thank you for your benevolence. And it's a give and take in life. You hoard it, and something bad happens. People may not be as kind to you because you weren't very kind with what you had. So it's the principle of sharing and caring and loving. And so we give. And then we see the word sow. And we see that word a lot in the Bible. Planting and harvesting. And that's another productive term. It's the goal of production. You don't sow just because you're bored and you want to go dig in the dirt and you got nothing better to do. Every farmer knows if I'm going to put it and I'm going to go through all this energy, I hope to get a good crop. I'm not just doing this so I can look like I know something about farming. I want to receive this. My family likely may be depending on this crop in various ways. And so that's part of why we do this, so we can receive the end and we can have that accomplishment, and we see the productivity. There's so many people that just, I don't understand. So let me tell you something. Can I just real talk for a moment? Why'd you come to church tonight? Don't answer that, but answer that. Keep it to yourself. Why'd you come to church tonight? Why are you watching tonight? Or why are you watching? Maybe it's not tonight. Maybe you're doing this at a different time because you're scheduled. Why are you watching, you that are online? Why are we doing what we're doing? Oh, there's nothing productive about that. That sounds like busyness, doesn't it? There's a lot of people being busy, but that doesn't. Do you think God rewards busyness? I don't. I think he talks about aiming. Every hunter knows you better have a good scope. You got to aim. You can't just fire it off and hope it hits something. You hit your mark. This is what he's telling us here. He's telling us you sow with the intent to reap. Does that sound uncommon to the teachings of Christ, sowing and reaping? No, that's exactly what he showed us. And a lot of times, I don't know. I hope you go to church to honor God, but to give a blessing and in return receive a blessing. I hope there's some thoughtful insight rather than just walking in a church building and say, well, I'm here. I did my part. Check. That's wood, hay, and stubble. We don't want none of that. You're not going to grow off of that. Man, I need some meat on me, Pastor. Let's go. I want to get something out of this. I want to grow in my faith. Yeah, you're stepping on my toes. Don't worry. Mine are smashed, by the way, usually Wednesday night, so don't feel bad. We're in the boat together. But this is the reality. And a lot of times I feel so bad. And by the way, I've been there. Can I be real? Even as a pastor, it's Wednesday. I'm supposed to be there. That's not the right answer. I want to be there. Why? Because I want to be with my people and I want to be with God's people. So the idea in verse 6 says, plant your seeds early in the morning and keep working in the field until dark. Who knows? Your work might pay off and your seeds might produce. Risk, yes. But God, absolutely. So you do it his way and you follow him. Lastly, verse 7 and 8. This is where the blessing comes because now we enjoy God's beauty. Watch this. Truly, the light is sweet. I love when the King James, way back centuries ago, actually speaks the way we did it one time. Some of the kids still say, sweet, man, that's sweet, you know? It's a sweet ride. And some of us try to be young and say things like the kids do. Truly, the light is sweet and a pleasant thing. It is for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man live many years and rejoice in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. All that cometh is vanity. I don't like verse 8. I like verse 7 a lot more because we go back into that darkness of Solomon, and he's dealing with the pros and cons in life. But I'm going to see verse 8, but I want to challenge you with this. Sunlight in Solomon's day was precious. Justin, we didn't have Rusk back then, right? No power company, no grids. It's just good old sun. Okay? Can't call you up. My power's out, man. Can you help me out? Not going to work. So it's probably, in our eyes, a lot not as, I mean, hey, I got a Generac over here. I got this over here. I got it all covered. They didn't have all this. It was the sun was out or it wasn't. And when it wasn't, it was dark. And by the way, understand Hebrew culture. In their house, typically, you'd have a little shelf at the top because, you know, they don't hide it under a bushel. You don't keep it low. The higher the light. That's why we typically put our lights up in the ceiling so you can get it casted across the room. And so you'd have a shelf and you'd have your candle up there and it would cast the light a little better. But it's still a candle on a little ledge, and you had a large open room, so to speak, like a common room, if you will. Barndominium, back before there were barndominiums, okay? And so you get the idea. Sunlight is precious because when you get it, guess what? You can't get out in the field and do this. It's hard to do things in the dark. And go get a flashlight. You know, none of these things worked. So sunlight would be precious, and you see that here. Truly, the light is sweet, and it's a pleasant thing to the eyes to behold the sun. And again, livelihood, agriculture, you needed that. And so it was critical to that. It was a precious gift from God. It was God's beauty. And yes, verse 8, in life, let's not kid ourselves. It's not all unicorns and rainbows, as people say, okay? It's literal darkness at times. And yes, maybe you're not in darkness now, but darkness is around the corner, and that's the way the devil works, and that's the way the world works, and this is what happens. So verse 8 is real. Yeah, okay. Rejoice in this, but remember there's days of darkness as well, and they're going to come too. So you and I have a choice. We can hide in trepidation of the big roller coaster and duck down and hope the darkness doesn't get us. Or we say, I'm here for the ride, God. Come what may. I'm not sure if there's going to be any drops. I can't see that far ahead, but I trust you. We may go upside down a time or two. It's okay. I trust you. So we could seize the day. We could say it's time to let it go. Or we can live a paralyzed faith. And that's almost an oxymoron, isn't it? Faith is active. It's not paralyzed. It's healthy. It's growing. It's vibrant. It's not dead. It's not stagnant, as paralysis would do to a person. Enjoy God's beauty. See what he's showing us. I'm just going to encourage you tonight. Get on the roller coaster. Embrace it. You say, Pastor, I don't have any motion sickness pills. It's okay. I think God's got something even better. And if we will taste and see that the Lord is good, and we will walk. And by the way, you're welcome to remind me because I'm going to be griping and complaining about some darkness in my life, and you're probably already there right now, or you've done that recently, and it's going to be okay. How do I know it's going to be okay? I've read the end of the book. Haven't you by now? Pastor, aren't you worried about the election and everything else? No, God's in control. Aren't you worried about what's going on in Israel and everything? Well, I pray for them, and it's troubling, yeah, but God's in control. Pastor, aren't you worried about our economy? Are you not seeing what's going on and all these troublesome things? And that too is going to be okay. How do I know all this? Faith. And right now, I'm good. Right now, the roller coaster's out. I'm in Kansas on the ride, okay? But don't worry, give me an hour or two, and I'll be doing this too. And we can talk. Maybe tonight you need to talk to the Lord. And maybe it's time you let it go. That's why we want to give you an opportunity to make a decision for the Lord tonight in whatever capacity that is. If you don't have saving faith, trust the Lord. If you don't have living faith, trust the Lord. It's always your best step. So, Austin, Dale, if y'all don't mind, please help us with this. We'll have a time of decision. And you can decide to follow in his path, to